Shalom, shalom. So, brother Dano
Shalom, brother Azrael.
coming back at you again, man. On the Sabbath, man. Shabbat shalom. Um, we're gonna continue this series, becoming a man. This is gonna be part 3, and it's gonna be entitled "Becoming Prudent." First and foremost, man, giving all honor and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We do so by way of His Son, who we see as an instrument of salvation, right? Um, so becoming prudent. We got a couple precepts lined up. Wanted to get on here, man. I know we only came on once this week for part 2, which was covering temperance, I believe, man. If you missed that one, go check that one out. That was a good one, man. Every man needs to know how to have some level of temperance. Um, and the first part 1, what was part 1 about? Hey, man, don't get me the line. I don't forgot what part 1 was about already.
Um, was it
Ooh,
patience?
nah, it wasn't patience. It was oh, I don't think it was like a word or anything. It was a phrase that I had came up with. Part 1 was over following through on things that you say. So pretty much if you say something, make sure you follow through on it. Make sure you do. If you pretty much, so biblically speaking, it would be if a man make a vow, make sure that you follow through with that vow, right? Whether that be with man, yourself, or to the Most High, right? Part 2 was on temperance or self discipline or self control, and part 3 is going to be on prudence, right? I'm gonna add this back on there. So this is the Google definition for prudent, right? You want to read that, or you want me to?
Yeah. Becoming Salakia, prudent. Acting with or showing care and thought for the future. Example, no prudent no prudent money manager would authorize a loan without first knowing its purpose.
Con man. So acting with or showing care for the future is somebody that is careful for everything that he does, man. A game that a lot of people play that you can see a lot of prudence in, right? Or foreseeing, like the brother is highlighting right now, is chess, right? If you ever played the game of chess, you literally have to think of your opponent's moves before they do them and predicate your moves off of what you think they're going to do, right? It's a game that kind of activates those prudent muscles in your brain, right? Very fun game once you actually take the time to, um, you know, learn it, right? Prudence, the quality of being prudent or cautiousness, right? Having a sense of care about every decision that you make, right? Right. So in line, right, with kind of the trajectory of part 1 and part 2. Part 1 was kind of about making the decision to do something and following through. Part 2 was about making the right decision, whether you're going to be angry, mad, sad, depressed, right? Still making the right decision in your temperance, right? Having self discipline to do what's right or make the right decisions, even with your emotions involved. And then part 3 is being prudent about the decisions you make, right? So kind of in line with the trajectory of the way this series is going, right?
Salakia.
Yeah.
Wanted to salute in, man. We give all honor and praise and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who sent his son as an instrument of salvation for the nation. You got it, of Israel. Be coming back from the street corner, man. It was pretty cold out there. Love seeing the brothers out there, all through social media and through YouTube, knowing that we have laborers out there doing the work. So Shabbat Shalom to those that keep the Sabbath today. As we close it out, I hope you guys are edified by this lesson.
Come, man. Rain, sleet, or snow. Them Israelites are trained to go. Man, Lord willing, we'll be out there to
You know,
come
being
back.
prudent and foreseeing, You if you know it's gonna be cold outside, you gotta take care of yourself and wear something warm. That's called prudence.
Right. Right.
Also,
Con.
another example of prudence too. I know the brothers bringing out examples, but you know, when you're in grade school or even when you like doing something simple as watching a movie, I know a lot of people like to binge watch and guess what's gonna happen next, right? And a lot of times, movies and stuff like that or books, what they'll do is they'll drop little foreshadowing, right? That word foreshadow means it's a hint or a context clue of what's going to happen next or what might happen in the future. And so that's practicing picking up on context clues and picking up on foreshadowing is practice in prudence and foreseeing what's going to happen in the future. And it helps you to be cautious, like we seen in those two definitions.
Con. Not only that, just having a wherewithal of somebody's experience of someone being there and doing that and getting a certain type of uh, conclusion or solution from doing something over and over again. They run into something that's kind of similar. They can kind of foreshadow what's going to take place, right? Even just your experience alone, right, can help out with that type of discernment, because that's really what it is. Almost when it comes down to it, man, being prudent is a kind of like a higher level of discernment or lower level, the way depending on how you want to view it, because prudence often takes place from you know worldly experience, or well, I'll say terrestrial experiences, versus sometimes discernment can come from a higher up. So either way you want to spin it, right? But
Yeah, man. And being prudent is something every man should have in their repertoire.
con
It's a characteristic that every man should have. Women, if you're watching this, if you're single, you should want a man that's prudent, right? Think about all the times where you might have been young and you were in the car and you trusted your dad to get you somewhere. You trusted your dad to have something handled, right? You want to look for a prudent man. And men, you want more time. Now I ain't gonna lie, they have something that's called dad brain. When you have kids and they say you start forgetting stuff because too much stuff is going on. So, I ain't gonna lie, men do forget some stuff, but more times than less, when somebody comes to a real man and say, "Hey, did you remember to do this? Hey, remember we got to do this." More times than less, that man should say, "I already did it. I got it handled. I did that
or
last week.
or I already thought about that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I already thought about that."
Got
Right?
that. I covered my bases, right?
Right. So a man should have that in his repertoire, man. A man, shouldn't need to be reminded of things. That's a real man. Now, a child, sometimes a woman, like Eve, should have been reminded, and Adam did remind Eve, but sometimes these women, they just got that thing to, I don't know. But anyway, a man shouldn't have to be reminded, a real man. Right now, that's not to say that a man's gonna hold in regard some things that women or kids hold in a high regard the same way. Now he might think I don't need to look into that. It don't make sense to look into that, right? So I'm not trying to cause discourse in the house or anything, but if it's serious enough, a man should not have to be reminded. For example, um, paying bills or saving money or planning a trip, right? A man is going to, and I'm sure the brother's going to go to it because I know it's one of his favorite precepts. A man should count the cost. A man preparing for your family, right? A man should have these things in his repertoire where he's always thinking about it, right? And that's why you see in the cartoons and the sitcoms and the movies that man is always at work because he's thinking about this bill and that bill and thinking about his kids at home and X, Y, and Z. A man is always thinking ahead.
Yeah, and honestly, man, if you see a man, right, and he forgets something, because we're like the brother said, we're not perfect, but if a man forgets to do something, a lot of times that brother is kind of confounded. Like, dang, how did that slip by? Like, how did I
Yeah.
not think of that?
I seen something too on Facebook, and they said, women They're always forgetting stuff because they got to get a makeup bag, their purse, 2 pair of shades. They got to get a water bottle plus their coffee mug. Then they got to get this, X, Y, and Z. For a man, they say a man needs 3 things: his wallet, his phone, and his keys. If a man got those 3 things, he got the world. And so being prudent is knowing the less things that you take value in, right, is gonna be greater in the long term, because you're not gonna forget certain things, right? Also, being prudent comes into play when you are trying to protect your house. Keeping it biblical, Christ says he's coming as a thief in the night. So you're supposed to be ready for a thief when he comes to your house, right? Now, brothers might have shotguns, brothers might have Glocks, Smith and Wessons, but a brother should always be in his mind, even when I'm in my bed. If I hear a little something, might be the air conditioning, I'm going over how I'm going to assess the situation. You should have bad things in the forefront of your mind, so when they come, you're not rattled, right? Even in your relationships with people, family members, spouses, you should have the worst case scenario in your mind, so that way when it arises as a man, you can not be emotional and handle it.
Because that's what women do, right? There's no shot at women, but a lot of women, they would rather not think of those things, to keep themselves from not stressing and stuff like that. But as a man, it's your job to think of those situations. That way when they come, you're not shooting in the dark, you're not acting out of emotion. You can go to a place where you've already played the scenario out in your mind. And a lot of times, man, that takes the emotion out of it, and now you can function logically, right?
Right. Because every choice has a consequence. So you should weigh out the consequence and play it out both ways. You know how some movies have alternate endings? Or if this would have happened, then this would have played out. If this would happen, then this would have played out. You should have that in your imagination. That's called prudence. If
Yeah.
I do this, either this is going to happen or this is going to happen. So let me take myself down this path and this path, so when it happens, I'll be able to handle it, right? And that's how a man's going to get far in life and uh, and be safe in
Right.
this earth on this side. But anyway, Con.
But man, there's so many facets of being prudent, man. Whether you thinking spiritually, physically, emotionally, man, you can use prudence in almost every way of life. I'm gonna read that definition one more time, then I'm gonna get a definition from the Bible, right? Um, Prudent, if you just type it in Google, you're gonna get acting with or showing care and thought for the future, right? So having a sense of care for the future when you're making your decisions, right? And doing the things that you do. Um, from the Bible, right? Let's go to Proverbs chapter 14 and verse number 15.
Salakia, can we go back to that real quick? I wanted to show right before we some of the similar words is wise, well judged, judicious, meaning, hey, you're gonna be like the Most High said, aren't we called to judge the world? Judicious. Um, I don't really know that word. Sagacious, sagacious, sage,
Sagacious.
shrewd, advisable. Right? You're gonna have a lot of advice to give people because you're thinking ahead.
Well,
Because
yeah, man. Somebody say something, you might be like, "Well, no, I wouldn't do it like that, man. I would do it like this because what's gonna happen is you're gonna run into X, Y, and Z." Y'all met some prudent men that talk like that, right? The brother
right,
said, "Shalom to the brother E man. I just love this brother, man. We got to link up. It's been too long." He said, "Right, prudence will take you far, and that's a big con, right?" Matter of fact, you can probably keep that on there, bro. Right? But now moving on to the definition that the Bible offers, right? And there's plenty of definitions in the Bible. This one that I like, that I think could be a staple precept. This is Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 15, right? It says, "The simple believeth every word," and this is the point, "but the prudent man looketh well to his going," right? The old English way of saying a prudent man cares for his future, right? Or the things that are going to be taking place in his future, right? You had something to say on this one? I know this is a precept of yours too.
Yeah, man. You know, the simple believeth every word, man. The simple will. That's why the simple, right? They, for example, man, coming into this truth, you got a lot of different sects, a lot of different things you can believe, right? The simple are gonna believe anything. Somebody say OT only, say this, they're gonna believe it. And oh, that sounds good. They just gonna believe it. They're not gonna think ahead about, oh, the scriptures do say this, so that can't be right. Right? A lot of
Mhm.
people, for example, you come in through One West, and then you believe everything, not knowing that, hey, nobody's perfect. So there might be some flaws in that. So when you come to, because you weren't smart enough to see the flaws ahead, when you see those flaws, now you're against One West and you just want everybody in One West to, you playing evil on them because you feel like they lied to you, right? Now
Con.
that also goes to uh, Christianity, and it goes to Buddhism and Nation of Islam and all of that, because you believe everything and you don't take the time to study and foresee a path. A lot of the times you end up in the wrong place, right? The brother said prudence will take you far, right? But also being simple will take you far in the wrong direction. Prudence will take you in the right direction. So that's why it says a prudent man looketh well to his going. If you really care about your soul, you're not just going to take somebody's word for it and just believe it.
That's why the Bible says, "Study to show thyself approved." There's precepts that say, uh, "Who was it that was found in the synagogues?" Debating whether these things were true. Paraphrasing, right? Um, that's why you got to know this stuff, like the brother said, and it actually brings me to one of my next precepts, man. That's right in line with what the brother said. Like I said, you got many facets of being prudent, and one of them is spirituality wise or spiritually wise, right? Dealing with this Bible, right? So let's go to Romans chapter 15 and verse 4, right? Being prudent with this Bible and with the pure doctrine. 14 and no 15 and 4. Slovakia. Romans 15 and 4. This is a classic precept too.
The book of Romans, chapter 15 and verse 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Come, man. A prudent man is gonna read because he knows this precept that all these things that were written in this book were written for time and that they're for our learning. So moving forward, we can base our decisions, we can base our truth off of what has happened in the past, right? So that's why a lot of people say they have a lot of wisdom now because they read a lot. And when they say that, they're meaning, hey, look, I don't have to go through a situation to know the bad that's going to come out of it, because there's bad situations that's already has taken place that we can learn from, and we don't have to make the same mistakes, right? We can take from those and looking forward to our future, avoid the bad mistakes that have already happened, and vice versa. We can see people make good decisions, right, and add them to our lives as well.
Right, Con. So, like, for example, the simple, like going back to the precept we just read, right? The simple believeth every word. You might come into this truth and the knowledge of the truth and know that you're an Israelite and you want to keep the commandments, and then you get a little too spiritual and you talk to somebody on a corner or in a weird store, or you change your life, you want to be vegan, so you go to a vegan restaurant and there's weird people in there, you're talking to them, and they might have tarot cards and they done told you your future, and a brother confronts you about it, say, brother, we're not supposed to be doing that. Come, brother, if you're a spiritual person, you know how to manifest, and you know that certain things God gave gifts to people. And but if you were prudent, you were able to read and learn from your ancestors, like King Saul, who went to the witch, right? And the witch and he knew it was wrong. And guess what? You seen the punishment that he got for contacting that witch. And you would say, you know what? I'm not gonna deal with these tarot cards because I'm prudent and I don't want the Lord to throw me away, right? And so to since we talking about Khan, the brother said that itching ears vibe, that itching ears spirit, right? But in context, I wanted to go here real quick, if it's okay with you, since we just mentioned kind of First Samuel, it says 16 and 18. It says, then answered one of the servants and said, behold, I have seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, right? It's finna give you some characteristics of the son of Jesse, which we know is King David. And we know King David was a man. All right. So these are some characteristics that you should have in yourself as a man. It says that is cunning in playing. So he was talented. You should find something that you're talented in. God gave everybody a gift, right? And a mighty valiant man, right? You got to learn what it takes to be mighty and valiant, right? A man of war. You can't be afraid of conflict. If you're afraid of conflict, there's no way that you should have a family, right? You're supposed to be a protector, right? It says prudent in matters. Everything that David did, he went to the Lord first and he foresaw what the possibility or the outcome could be. Now, not saying that just because you're a prudent man that you're not going to make the wrong decision sometimes, right? Because sometimes temptation does come and we do fall short to our flesh sometimes, like what he did with Bathsheba, right? But nonetheless, when his firstborn was killed, he was better. He wasn't crying or anything because he had already foreseen, hey, the wages of sin is death. Somebody gonna have to die. It's gonna be me or this baby, right? So when the matter was carried out, he told his servants and handmaids, hey, look, God has made his decision. It says a comely person and the Lord is with him. So a Lord is gonna be with a prudent man.
Right. That's another thing too, man. When you're prudent, you know, uh we talk about certain things all the time, man. And for the sake of the video, I won't go into depth about some of the conversations that men have. But when you're prudent, man, you kind of, like the brother C said, man, in certain situations, you foresee the bad things that happen, right? Even when it comes to relationships, right? We say it all the time, man. Don't do anything that you don't plan on keeping up for a long period of time, right? Um, and that's just with any relationship. That could be with you and your woman, you and a friend, right? If you're one way, make sure it's the genuine, true way, because what's going to happen is expectations are going to get involved, right? And dealing with prudence, you dealing with prudence, man, you kind of learn to limit your expectations because you can see things play out, right? And so when something plays out that's bad or something plays out that's good, usually a man, he kind of already knows, like, oh, that's, it was gonna happen anyway, right? And so that's the way we're supposed to be operating, with that sense of prudence. And then it's like this, right? I have a phrase I kind of added. It's an infamous phrase, but I kind of added on to the end of it. It says, um, damn, brain fart, but control what you can control and let the rest unfold, right? So you can only control what you can control. And then when something else, when something happens, then you kind of just, play off of that when it comes. But 9 times out of 10, you already know what's coming, right? Speaking about a matter like David and Bathsheba, man, if you know the book of Susanna, right? If you read the story of Susanna, I love it because she was so prudent in the matter of, the situation she was in, with the two priests that, were trying to lay with her, unlawfully. She was prudent enough to know the law, right? A lot of times our prudent decisions can come from just sticking to the law, statutes, and commandments. She at the time, right, when all this was going down, she understood that, hey, if you yell out, when you're in distress, when somebody is trying to forcibly lay with you, right, like the law says, that, hey, somebody might hear you, and it might be a way of your protection. When it came down to it and they were in the court of law or whatnot, right, I believe that came up to where somebody did hear her yell, right? And it kind of cleared her name. You know what I'm saying? But I love that story because her prudence outweighed the prudence of the two priests that thought they was gonna go in there, swindle her, get what they wanted, and nothing was gonna happen, right?
Also, man, when you think about prudence, and another example of prudence would be Eleazar, right? Eleazar, the old man in Second Maccabees chapter 6, right? He was able to foresee, if I eat this pork, what's going to happen. He weighed out the pros and the cons. His life was on the line. He said, you know what? I might as well get tortured, because if I do this, it's going to stain my name, and my whole nation is going to follow my lead and sin,
Right.
right? So
And he was old, so it was like, man, I could eat this pork and die tomorrow anyway, right? So what's the
he
point of
weighed out. He weighed, as a
yeah,
man. You weigh out the option you weigh out all your options, and you assess the situation at hand, right? Now, the simple would have been like, more I'm not gonna die if I just eat this lamb and pretend like it's pork. All right, I'll do it. The simple gonna do it. Not knowing, oh, I'm almost at the end of my years anyway. Not knowing, oh, it's people looking up to me. The simple is not gonna look at all that stuff. They're not gonna look at possibilities of things that can happen. The simple is gonna take their time. They're not gonna be quick and make rash decisions like, um, oh, I got in an argument, I'm gonna divorce my wife. Oh, I don't find I don't like this brother because he does X, Y, and Z. So I'm gonna X him out of my life. Burning bridges, making a rash decision, right, will get you in a tough spot. You got to be able to foresee, okay, this person would be able to help me down the line in this. Not saying to use that person, but you gotta understand that, we're a body, right? And
no,
we gotta
man,
be
this
patient with each other.
it kind of goes to a precept that I brought out last video in part two, um, when we're talking about temperance, right? If you haven't seen that, go watch that. But I brought out, it says, examine the truth before you rebuke, right? Paraphrasing. And just like the brother said, man, at prudence is literally doing that, examining every situation before you get the chance to figure out whether or not that's going to be a bad situation or not, or a bad decision or not, right? You
Right,
got to
like
actually take the time to get out your emotions, right? Be prudent enough to examine the situation before you open your mouth, before you do an action to actually make that decision.
right, man, because you gotta think, man, a lot of the decisions that a man makes, they don't they don't only affect his life, they affect other people's life, because we've been given the task of being a headship or lords over creations and over things that we have relationships with, wife and kids, animals, right? So the decisions you make as a man, right, will affect everything. It's like a trickle effect. So if you make a decision and you know that you know what they say in basketball and sports, KYP, know your personnel. A prudent man is going to think about his personnel that's underneath him. Nah, my dog can't handle that. No, my kids can't handle that. No, my wife can't handle that. They're gonna think about these things before they make a decision, because guess what? If you know that they can't handle it, if you know your personnel, right? Why would you do something you know they can't take or they can't handle?
Right? You playing a basketball game, right? You got I don't know. Did Shaq used to play for Golden State? I might be tripping.
Lakers, Magic, Celtics, Miami.
I could have sworn he was with Golden State at least for a little bit, but I don't know. But nonetheless, let's say you got Shaq on the team and you got Stephen Curry, right? The game is on the line. A prudent man that knows his personnel. If both of them open, if I want to win the game in the future, even though it's right now, the game is right now, it's not over yet. If I want to win the game, I'm going to pass it to Stephen Curry, right? Shaq might be able to hit a three every now and then, but a prudent man is going to know the best outcome, right? You know what's crazy? Um, Me personally, this is how I feel. Understanding everyone's strengths and weaknesses. Con, right? This is how I feel, right? And I give most men the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times when you're dealing with other men, especially other men in the truth, I give them the benefit of the doubt because I expect everybody in the truth to be prudent, right? But what happens is you might run into somebody that made a decision, and from the outside looking in, you might think like, "And why did the brother do that?" or "Why did he make that decision?" Sometimes your woman might look at you like, "Why'd you make that decision?" Right? It might seem crazy. I always give people the benefit of the doubt, and I always say, man, if somebody does something, they had a logical reason for doing it. It might not have been the best logical reason, but 9 times out of 10, if a man makes a decision, right, and he's not inebriated or intoxicated, right, 9 times out of 10, there's a logical reason why he did it. And a lot of times, man, you can just sit down and ask him, and he'll tell you. You'll be like, "Oh, okay, I see why you did it like that." Right? There's always should be a sense of some type of prudence in any man's decision, though. Right? I don't know too many men that just make decisions just straight off of whim, right? Even though they're out there now. Don't get me
Now
wrong.
sometimes, man, you do get men that make decisions out of emotion, um, and that could have part to do with how they were raised, maybe. But sometimes, a man will make a decision out of emotion, and he'll have to stick to that. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Exactly, man. That's what I
being
just covered this last video.
right, being a man sometimes, being a man of your word, that can go with part one. Sometimes being a man of your word will have you in some hard situations, right? But that's also part of being a man, you know.
It,
It's
it, it literally ties in. So last we talked about temperance last, and we talked about being a man of your word, and both of them um were on track with what you were saying. Because I was saying in temperance, I was saying, man, you're gonna make it a bad decision based off of emotion. And then I said in part one, if you're a man, and even if you make a bad decision off of emotion, a lot of times that pride comes in, and we don't want to let it go. And now we got to follow through on this bad decision that we made. And if anybody says anything, even though we know that it's wrong, we bucking up against what they're saying, right? So they all kind of one and the same, man. And that's what's so important about becoming a man and taking the proper steps to examine every situation, taking the proper steps to have self-discipline, taking the proper steps to follow through on what you're gonna say without emotion. That's why it's so important in becoming a man, right?
also, I like that the brother said strengths and weaknesses, right? I know he honed on a lot of weaknesses, but you got to know the strengths of your personnel as well, right? And that comes in handy because it'll make your life a lot easier in a lot of cases, and it also will bring out the best in, for example, your animal or your kid or your wife. It'll bring out the best in them. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can see a situation that may help their faith and help their walk that they don't see, right? And you can say, hey, maybe you should do this X, Y, and Z. I know a lot of women in the nation are looking for a sister that does X, Y, and Z. And um, a lot of kids would want you. For example, there for it's a brother named Eshawn that makes music, and his kids do cartoons and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So he was able to foresee gifts in his kids and strengths in his even his wife, and he has got them to help the nation in that way. So knowing the strengths as well will help you out in the long run, because ultimately it'll make your life easier.
Man, and we're missing one important being in this whole thing. We talking about other people, but even just knowing your self personnel, right, will help out with being prudent, right? For instance, I work in a fab shop, right, where we weld and we make stuff out of metal and stuff like that, right? Um, Fabrication is kind of like putting things together, and then you got stuff like welding after it's already put together to join the metal together, right? Somebody might not be good at fabricating, putting things together, making sure that everything is symmetrical. It's a 90 degrees, angles is squared up. You know what I'm saying? Somebody might be bad at that, but might be good at welding, right? Be laying some pretty welds, right? You have to understand in your own personnel, instead of me pretending to be like I'm just good at everything. Hey, bro, you want to fit these up and then I'll weld them afterwards, right? That way I'm being prudent enough to say we're not gonna mess up these parts. They're gonna look good and I'm gonna have my job in the future. Right?
You know,
A prudent man looks to stuff like that instead of, and it all comes down to pride. you know, even the part one and part two in the beginning, the downfall of all of these things is having a sense of pride, knowing what you're good and what you're bad at as well, right? Even I mean, when it comes from your job, being in the truth, playing sports, right? Knowing to say, hey, bro, you do this better than me. Would you like to do this so we can get to a common goal faster and have a better outcome, right? It's just that simple.
You know, something that helps me with that is because you know we all struggle with that pride and not wanting to say that we're not as good in something. Something that helps me out in that area is you being humble enough to even mention the idea. You are creating greatness because you mentioned the idea. Um, a lot of times, brothers, you know, want to be teachers because nobody ever told them, hey, Ak, you're not a really good teacher, but you're good at this. You're better at me than this. So you should really just do this, bro. It'll help us out a lot. Sometimes a brother might be, you know, I don't know, you know, just simple stuff like that. For example, the brother said fabrication. I remember one time a manager or a supervisor asked me to do something, and I knew for a fact I haven't done this before, right? It was a certain um, work piece that I hadn't worked on before, but I knew two guys, right? I knew two Edomites that had, you know, they were pretty decent, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna just tell them when he leave, and I'm gonna get the job done. He didn't ask who's gonna do it. He just said it need to get done. So I went up to them two Edomite brothers. I said, hey, so and so said he needs this done, this done, and this done. Can y'all do this, this, and this? Now I'm not their manager, but that's how I laid it on them. And when they got it done, the supervisor came in and he talked to me. He said, hey, man, I just want to thank you, man. They said it looks great. X, Y, and Z is getting painted right now, blah, blah, blah. I just want to thank you for that, man. And so being humble enough, and now I could have been prideful and said, you know what? I'm going to do it myself and get all the glory. But then I could have messed up and I could have not got all the glory. But being humble enough to know my strength and my weaknesses, I got the glory because I was humble.
Right,
Right.
man.
So,
It's the only reason why we have Kobe Bryant's of the world and Derek Fishers, right? Nothing wrong. You know, you can master anything that you find that you're good at, right? That's why you got some local rappers, man. They go from being a rapper to a singer to a producer, and they find out they're good at producing because they didn't want to let go of that pride to tell them, hey, bro, you can't rap and you can't sing, right? But you still like music and you still want to be a part of it. We understand that. You're good at producing music. You're good at listening to the sound, but you can't rap, right? And the crazy part is that also creates an environment where other people can be real with you as well, right? Bro, you really good at. You did it one time. Now he's saying, bro, you really good at this. I think you should do it, bro, because I don't want to mess up. Right now he's saving his tail, right? And now everybody's coming to a common goal. If you think about it, that's how our nation is supposed to be operating, right?
right. We're
We're
not
all one body, different extremities, right? Some people got to be the fingers, some people got to be the hands, right? It's every facet of life, even in the family structure, right? You got a man and you got a woman, you got the children, right? um like we say all the time, a lioness can't be the lion. It's got to be one lioness, and multiple lionesses, of course, but dude, there's a lioness and you got a lion, bro. You know what I'm saying? They can't be the same person, you know.
Right.
And so you got to understand that personnel even within yourself, and it's gonna help out in the long run, you know.
We're working as a body, man. You know, a body has one mouth, right? So sometimes you gotta understand, especially on the street. A lot of times you gotta bridle your mouth and let that one person speak. Sometimes, you know, we evangelize on the street. You got two people watching. You got people on this side, people on this side, right? That's your eyes. But you know, you got how many fingers? You got 10 fingers, man. A lot of people gotta lift up and do the work. Now these hands might not get seen all the time, but they doing work, right? And so, for example, a brother might say he got a steady hand. That brother is young. The brother, he can learn a lot by paying attention to what's going on. Let's make him a cameraman, right? Now that brother that is being made a cameraman, he could be one or two people. He could be prudent and say, you know what, man, if I'm a cameraman, I'm gonna see every dialogue. I'm gonna be able to learn fast. I'm gonna be able to remember these precepts. Also, I'm building for the nation. If I don't record this, all these viewers aren't gonna be able to see it. So I'm really one of the most important people out here.
Right.
Or he could be the person, man, I don't want to be the cameraman, man. Why I gotta hold this camera all day? Man, man, I should be reading or should be passing out flyers or I should be teaching, man. So you got one or two people. You got a prudent man that's going to think about those things that actually matter. And you got a selfish, simple man that's going to think about the right now and be in his emotions.
And right, and you know the most. This is where prudence really comes into play when you are the lower man, right? When you are the cameraman, when you're the water boy, when you're I don't know the reader. This is when prudence comes into play. Why? Because you get to sit back with no major responsibility and learn how things go, right? Behind the camera, you're literally you're literally capturing moments, and in your mind you can say, when it is my time, I'm not gonna say it like that, I'm gonna say it like this. When it is my time, I'm gonna address a person like this because I see that how he addressed it offended this person, right? When you're a reader, you can look at the verses and you might say, "No, I'm gonna read this verse first next time," right? You know, even when it's welding, right? When you real with yourself at the end of the shift, right? At the end of the shift, you go to the person that's good at fitting up, and you say, "Hey, bro, how'd you learn how to be so good at fabrication? Like, how you learn how to fit that stuff up, right?" And you learn right then to have prudence for your future. That way, in the future you don't have to ask somebody to fit something up for you, right? Even though nothing's wrong with asking those questions, right?
Man, and being prudent is it's being another word could be consistent, right? A lot of times when you know there's a promise, right? A lot of times when you know there's a blessing, a lot of times when you know there's an increase, you're gonna be consistent until you get it, right? And then you'll start having little victories along the way that encourage you, right, to keep doing it, right? Because you're doing the right thing. For example, I have a dog, right? I know now my dog doesn't know kennel yet, right? She'll get there because I do it every day. I make her sit and I say kennel. I throw a treat in there, she go in there. She come out, I say sit, kennel. Throw a treat in there, she go in there, she come out. Now as a puppy, she might not get it. I might say kennel and don't throw nothing and she don't move, right? But eventually when she gets older, she's going to associate the word kennel with I need to go in there, right? Same thing with your kids, same thing with your job, same consistency and knowing the future will always get you where you need to be. If I keep these commandments, if I do these law, statutes, and commandments, if I keep denying evil and wickedness, I know I'm going to get these blessings from the Most High God. I know I'm going to get protection from the Most High God. I know I'm going to get the promises that He promised us, right?
Mhm.
So you got to be consistent, right? And not have any breaks in your prudence. What's the point of being prudent if you're not going to make the right decision all the time, right?
Or the majority of the time.
Right.
This is the book of Luke, chapter 14. Gonna move along here, man. We can be talking about examples here all day, right? Let's hone in on you know, the meat of it, right? Luke 14 and 28. For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it, right? Um, One of my favorite precepts right here, where it says, and people say this in the world too, you got to count the costs, right? Before you make any decision, you have to count the cost. Before I marry this woman that has kids, let me count the cost, right? Before I go and buy this house that's going to be X, Y, and Z every month, let me count the cost, literally, right? In this case, it says who builds a tower and doesn't count the cost and make sure I got all the material I need to build this stuff, right? Before you make any decision, man, make sure you count the cost, man. You weigh out the pros and the cons, the outcomes, like the brother was saying at the beginning, right? The good things that you can run into, the bad things that you can run into. That way you don't get midway in the tower and realize, you're 153 bricks short. You know what I'm saying? It's all about prudence, right?
Oh man, it's always about prudence. And like the brother said, man, that tower could be a number of things. That tower, man, could be something as simple as um, oh, I need to get out there and pull these weeds out my yard before they take over. It could be something simple like that, or it could be something serious as, um, you know, I don't know, one of the things the brother said, uh, quitting a job, right? Let me quit my job because I want to be an entrepreneur, right? You need to count the cost before you become an entrepreneur. You need to count the cost before you make heavy decisions in your life. You can't just make them and think everything's. For example, if a lot of people watched that Cat Williams interview, and he said, "I don't like telling the story of me being homeless because it's not a story that can fit everybody." He said, I personally, I knew that I was going to be okay, but I wouldn't advise anybody to just leave their house at the age of 13 and be homeless, right? You gotta count the cost. You gotta weigh out your options, right? What's best for your path.
Con. I want to go to one more precept. 20 and I think 23. Am I even tripping? Am I tripping, man?
And a lot of times, like the brother Denal said earlier, people don't understand why you make a decision that you made, right? And
Oh, sorry, Slacky.
you're good. And they don't understand the decision that you made, and you might not feel like explaining it to them right then, but by the time you do tell them, they're like, oh, well, why didn't you just say that? Right? A prudent man is always going to have a reason for doing what he's doing, right? And a lot of times, to the simple or to the emotional, it might not make sense because they're not prudent, right? But other prudent men are going to be able. There's been plenty of times where the brothers are sitting back and like, he probably did this because X, Y, and Z. And then lo and behold, X, Y, and Z. We're like, yeah, he was prudent. And you only know that because you were prudent. And when you're prudent, a lot of times you're advisable, like that definition we had pulled up earlier, and you could put yourself in somebody else's shoes. That's how you want your judges to be. That's how you want your elders to be. You want them to be able to put themselves in other people's shoes and to see what's going to happen.
Think about Joshua and David, man. How good at war they were, and how they had to come up with strategies to take down their enemies and stuff like that. They had to be very prudent, man, because not only it's funny, man, because they're known as valiant men and mighty men, because not only were they prudent for their lives and their families' lives, but they were being prudent for the whole nation lives, right? When you're a leader and you got X amount of people under you, right? And you talking about life or death, man. I gotta be prudent because I got soldiers' lives that I'm looking out for. So a lot of prudence goes into that strategy, into those war strategies. You know what I'm saying? And through the spirit and power of the Most High God, of course, right? But that can show you the different levels of prudence there are. You might be only good at being prudent about yourself, right? You might be good at being a prudent when it comes to yourself and your family. Maybe, like the brother said, not everybody was meant to be prudent, a man that's over, congregation, being a leader and stuff like that, man. You got to be real with yourself, though, but also understand that there's room to grow so you can be that type of people. But you got to master the little stuff in your life first before you get to that bigger stuff, right? I think in the New Testament it says, get your house in order. For if a man, how can a man lead many if he can't even lead those in his own household? Paraphrasing, right? So, but come,
You know, a phrase that they say in the world is I'm 2 steps ahead of you. I'm a step ahead of you, right? And that can go back to the game of chess. Now, when you first learn how to play chess, you think you're kind of good and you done made some moves because you think you're thinking ahead until you play somebody that's better than you. And guess what? Now you were 1 step ahead, but they were 2 steps ahead, right? And now you're like, dang, how did I not see that?
right,
Right? And that's life. But guess what? Because that happened, now you can foresee it happening again, and now you can be 3 steps ahead now, right? So life is all about gaining wisdom through experience, and that wisdom and that experience, right? whether you went through it or whether you heard it from an elder, right, will give you prudence, and you'll be able to be steps ahead of what's in front of you.
God. All those experiences kind of download into your mind, right? And then you can use them for a foretime, just like these scriptures, right? This is Sirach chapter 20 and verse 27. I just want to get 27 and 28, and then I'll let you bring out some precepts too. Um, but it says, a wise man shall promote himself to honor with his words. So you can even be prudent when it comes to the words that you speak, right? There's scriptures that say, prepare what to say before thou sayest, right? It says, a wise man knows when to hold his tongue, and a fool does not. Even when you speak, man, have a sense of care for the words that come out your mouth. Just like in part one, right? Have a sense of care for what comes out your mouth, because there's power in the tongue, right? Um, your words like this can promote you even in the job force, right? Or even if you're in a camp, your words can promote you, or they can abase you, right? And he that has understanding will please great men, man. You have this understanding, you can please great men, even if you're the lowliest of the low, right? Y'all seen Pursuit of Happiness? You seen Will Smith? He was so witty with his word. He was homeless and he got invited to go to I think an MLB game or something like that, living lavish, right? Riding in the convertible and everything, right? Because he's prudent for the stuff that came out of his mouth, right? And the next verse says this, because the brother did mention this too, right? He that tilleth his land shall increase his heap, and he that pleases great men shall get pardon for their iniquity, right? He says, he that, but I want to hone in on this first part, he that tilleth his land shall increase his heap, right? For all of our gardeners out there, all the people that's in husbandry, they got livestock and things like that, a great deal of prudence comes in between that, because and why I say great deals, because I mean, you're thinking months ahead of time, right? When it talks about the harvest, you're thinking about putting in the ground as soon as in the time that's needed, so you can get a harvest in the harvest time, that the earliest harvest time, that when it comes, that way you can get the most bang for your buck. When you get an animal and you want them to conceive a child, so you can increase your livestock. These are things you got to think about aforetime when they get pregnant, and when the baby comes. Is it going to come in the wintertime? If it does come in the wintertime, how am I going to keep this calf warm? Things like that, right? So even when it comes to husbandry, we talked about this I think in part one, how husbandry is ordained, because it instills self-discipline and stuff like that. But even in this, husbandry is ordained because it establishes a level of prudence that you need to know, right?
Yeah, man. So, husbandry spiritually will be caring for the flock of his people, the sheep, right? You got to understand how to talk to people. You got to understand, if I say this, right? If I say this, then this person probably will walk away from me. So let me not say that right now. They're not ready for it right now. You got to understand, it's not about winning an argument, right? It's not about winning an argument when it comes to family members and things like that. You got to be able to foresee and know which direction this spreading the gospel and this truth I should take, right? We're supposed to be fishermen, right?
Right, because you might not be able to win the argument or conversation right then and there, but you definitely don't want to say something that's gonna prevent you from ever speaking to this person again about that situation.
Right, man. As a fisherman, as an angler, you should be able to. Oh, it's kind of cold today. They're kind of the fish aren't on the surface. Well, I can't use a top water. I'm gonna use this little Cinco with the weight on it, so it drops down and it'll wave and it'll wake them up. Or if I want to wake them up, I'm gonna use this spin bait that's gonna rattle and shine in the water. You got to think about how you're gonna win souls, right? And also, being prudent is knowing, okay, Salaki, I had a brain fart. I don't even know where I'm going with that.
Well, it's the same thing, man. Like even like if you're trying to think about animal control, right? They gotta be prudent, because man, you run at a dog with a net, or you run at a dog with what looks like a leash or something like that, they're gonna run away. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you gotta put the net down and get a candy bar or something. Now get down low, right? And put your hand out or something. It's gonna be okay, buddy. And when they come, then you grab them up. You know what I'm saying? But like the brother was saying, you gotta be prudent in situations to know what's gonna get you the outcome that you want.
Let me go here real quick. Hosea 14:9. Who is wise, and he shall understand these things? Prudent, and he shall know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the just shall walk in them, but the transgressors shall fall therein. Right? So if you're wise, you're prudent, you're gonna evaluate the words of the Lord, right? The laws of God, and understand that they're just and they're true. Let me walk in them, right? But if you're a transgressor, if you're a sinner, if you're simple, if you're wicked, if you're evil, right? You're gonna look at them and make an excuse to say, I understand what God's saying here, but I don't think it should be that way, right? And a lot of times that's because you're trusting in your flesh and not trusting in the spirit. Your spirit man is gonna tell you what's right a lot of the time, but a lot of times we don't listen to our spirit, we listen to our flesh, right?
Come.
And go here real quick. Proverbs 22:3. We already read this, huh? I don't think we did. So a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, right? But the simple pass on and are punished. Now, a prudent man is going to examine every situation. A prudent man is going to know when to be a mighty valiant man and also when to hide himself, right? A prudent man's going to weigh out the options, right? You don't want to get ahead of yourself in anything. You want to be led by the Most High God. So the only way, right, to be led by the Most High God is to meditate on His word. His word's going to tell you what to do because, like we read, we're going to go through forefathers and foremothers and things that they went through, and we're going to put ourselves in their shoes in the situations that we come across in life.
Come, man. Not only that, Christ talks about how you can discern the times of the skies and the seasons, but you can't discern the times that are coming, right? This book allows us to be prudent about the things that we're going to start seeing, right? The brother Obadiah did a video talking about, hey man, we in the last days, man. The persecution is coming, right? Brother Obadiah said, hey, look, hey, just know when you come into this truth, know what you're signing up for. You know what I'm saying? Know what you're signing up for, because a prudent man doesn't just go off a whim, just with whatever is a trend. Especially in this truth, you might think it's cool to be an Israelite, this and the third, and then when stuff starts happening, you're gonna like, hold up, I didn't see none of this coming. Like the brother said, I didn't see none of this coming, because you have to be prudent enough to count the cost when you come into this thing, right? And so just like we can discern whether or not it's going to be raining outside because it's gloomy and the clouds are out. Same thing, we're supposed to be prudent in this world and in the things that are taking place. It's because we got this book, like the brother said, that are written for our learning. That's why prophecy is here. Prophecy is literally a cheat code to being prudent, right?
And it says a prudent man foreseeth the evil. So that's also another term for a prudent man is not green. A prudent man is not going to just let certain things happen, right? A prudent man may be the bearer of bad news a lot of the times. A prudent man may be that person that just always has to remind you of the bad things that can happen, because it always should be a just balance of things. If everything is always go, 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 and nobody's there to say stop, hold on, right? There's going to be a lot of accidents and wrecks.
The so-called party pooper, man.
Right. So sometimes a prudent man is a party pooper, right? Sometimes a prudent man is the one that say, hold on.
And that goes back to your point too, where it says a prudent man foreseeth the evil. You can't be a scary man that doesn't want to ever worried about anything bad that could possibly happen, man. Leave that feeling and that emotion for the women, right? As a man, you weigh out these options, you think about the evil to come, and you adjust properly. That's what you're. Don't be one of the men where, in Christianity, in colloquial Christianity, they'll say, Most High didn't give me a spirit of fear, so I ain't even worried about it no more, right? I ain't even gonna give it my attention. I ain't gonna give no power to it. No, you need to think about these things. And so, because especially if the Bible tells you they're going to come, you need to be thinking about these things. So when they do come, you can you can handle them the best way possible.
Right. And it's a difference between giving power to something and worshiping something and just acknowledging that it's there. Right. When you foresee that evil, right, that's not you giving power to it or worshiping it. That's you being smart. Right. When Christ was on the earth, he knew that Satan was working. Right. He didn't turn a blind eye to it. But a lot of times now, our people have been programmed for cognitive dissonance. And if we don't like, if it don't sit still with, if it don't sit well with us, right, we just act like it's not there, right? For example, today on the street, the brother Denal was talking to a brother that would not give up his black, right? He did, and whenever we brought out multiple precepts, whenever we would read them, he would try to change the conversation and make us talk about some craziness, right? Because he understood that evil was gonna eventually damage his lungs, but he didn't want to look at that evil. He didn't want to foresee that happening in his future. He didn't want to be prudent enough to say, this is not healthy for me if I want kids, if I want a family in the future, if I want to live longer. He didn't think about that because why? He wanted to pass on. He did not want to focus on the evil. And because of that, eventually his body's going to punish him for it. The Most High will punish him for it.
Come, man. Come. You have another precept, or is that all you got? That's it. Come, man. Well, I'm Brother Denal.
Brother Azrael.
And with that, man, it has been another video closing out the week. Trying to get y'all at least 2 videos a week, like we said, man. Hope you guys had a great Shabbat. As we close out, we want to give all honor and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We do so by way of his son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, who we recognize is an instrument of salvation for our nation, the nation of Israel, who we see over here on the western hemisphere of the world predominantly being the so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. But we know that we are scattered abroad into every nation, right? The 4 corners of the earth. With that, we say shalom. Proceeding to the book of Matthew, chapter 12 and verse 30, man, always know if you ain't gathering, you're scattering, right? If you ain't gathering, you're scattering. With that, we say shalom.